Welcome to the Guided Podcast, where we support you to find the courage to listen and act. I'm Amanda Goolsby, and with me is
Katz.
Let's get started.
Welcome back to Guided, the courage to listen and act. And today we are going to be just continuing with the prior episode on how do you know? How do you know what's yours to do? How do you know when it is yours to do it? How do you know when you're ready? And then continue on through the tests that will come, because that is really part of it, is that once you have the courage to act, you are going to get tested. And how do you know if those tests are a sign that you're supposed to give up or keep going? Are you supposed to surrender or double down and move through the tests? So thanks for being back here with me today.
Thank you guys for listening. And if you haven't yet listened to the last episode, it will be really helpful to listen to that before diving into this episode so that you can have some context around the conversation and the deeper conversation. So one of the questions that you just proposed is, how do you know what is yours to do? And I know that this has been and is probably going to continue to be a lifelong journey for you and for everyone else on the planet. And at the very young age of, what are you?
49, baby.
There's more clarity now than ever before. But when you look back on your journey over the last 15 years, let's call it, which is the gap between where I'm at and where you're at, where along that path can you identify some signposts or knowings where it was like, okay, I know now that this is mine to do. And then another breadcrumb would come and maybe the vision would expand and you're like, oh, wow, now I see that this is mine to do. But like, how does someone actually go, okay, like I trust and know that this is mine to do?
I have known what is mine to do on the individual level probably for the past 20 years. And what I had to continue to work with throughout all that time is that I wasn't ready to do it yet, and yet still hold the vision of the knowing of what is mine to do, even as I was learning the lessons each and every step along the way that would actually make me the woman who is ready to do it. And not losing sight in each of those moments along the way where I was like, oh, I've totally fucked it all up. There's no possible way I'm going to be able to do that now because this thing is happening. And in those moments, especially, continue to hold the vision of my knowing so that I could keep going. And that is why I named my company in 2011. I named my company It's All Happening. I think we talked about this already. So that I would remember it's all happening. And if we look at the reality of time, and especially if we are multidimensional beings that are both living on this 3D plane, but also in touch with the parts of ourselves that are on other planes of existence, time is happening in ways beyond just this 3D plane. And what that means for me now is this recognition that everything is actually happening all at once. And so all of the timelines of possibility that you can see and feel and know are actually all happening now. But in our dense 3D forms, we separate them into now, before, and later. Past, present, and future, even though it is all actually happening. And on a future episode, I'll give a full transmission of my understanding of time and the toroidal fields and how to choose timelines and how that all works, which was some big awarenesses for me over time. But for this purpose, I think the most important thing is to recognize that it is all happening. And there is some part of you that knows what is yours to do individually. And my understanding of purpose and what's come through me over the past really 15 or 20 years as I've been in this question of who am I, why am I here, what's mine to do, is really recognizing that we have this individual purpose and then we also have this collective purpose. And the collective purpose is for us to heal the ancestral wounding that we've been given, and to then, from this healed place, create a new future reality. And that's really the work that you're doing, Amanda, when you are inviting mothers and daughters to come together in ceremony. You are inviting, like, your individual purpose within this at this moment in time is to invite people into this collective purpose work. And what I believe is that once we do the collective purpose work of healing the ancestral wounds, which I did much less knowingly, much less intentionally, it was happening through me, but I didn't really know, I didn't have context, I didn't know it was happening, that landed in the most transformational experience of my life of accepting my mother and then feeling the acceptance of my mother, was the collective work that is ours to do. And I got to do that as well with my children. You haven't gotten that gift yet, but you will. And that's a whole nother layer we can talk about. But once the collective healing work is done through us, then the ability to actually do the individual purpose work, at least for me, came online really powerfully, so that I was able to now step into what I believe is my individual purpose work, which, again, I knew 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I knew, some part of my being knew, that I was here to create new paradigm business models and new financial systems. I looked at Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman and the advice that they were giving to millions of people around how to make decisions about the use of their financial resources. And I knew I was here to give an alternative. But then I had to live the next 15 years of my life so that I actually could have a framework and a model to provide that alternative. Like, I couldn't give it until I had lived it. And so I think this is where we come back to on that this is now the time, and what's coming through for you to bring mothers and daughters together is because you have done this work with your own mother. And now, because you are able to pause, surrender through the mind noise that says accomplish, 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 keep going, keep creating from the fear and the scarcity. And you said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait until it's really clear. And then you get the clear message, this is yours to do. Then you're able to say yes to it because you actually have already done the work with your mom. And now I think the question is, how do you know when it is yours to do it? And how are you going to stay the course even as the tests come? And what might those tests look like that test your resolve, that test your willingness to keep going? Because the tests will come. Life is testing us on a continuous basis, really to determine our worthiness. And, one of the things that I hear a lot is, you're just worthy because you're worthy. And I don't actually believe that that's true. I believe that, sure, at one level, we're all worthy, and life tests you to see, maybe we could call it readiness. Life will test you to see if you're really ready. And so as you step into this, knowing that it is yours to bring mothers and daughters together to do medicine work, life's going to test you. Right. And how you handle those tests is going to determine how quickly you're able to get into the actual action and stay with it.
Yeah. And I can see already the micro tests that have arisen, just in conversations with people, and people coming up against what is their own resistance, but projecting their own resistance or their own fear onto the vision that I have, right? And I think that that's something that people experience potentially often, maybe, and someone who's listening to this shares their idea with someone, and then someone, it's like, brings their little baby or their little seedling of a vision to someone, and then that person has something negative to say, or why it's not going to work, or why they wouldn't do it. And so we have to remember that so much of that, and it's, I feel clear about that, is not allowing other people's fear or projection to have an effect on the vision of what's being created.
Well, there's something really actually valuable there that I don't want you to miss, which is that when you share your nascent infant idea, your little baby idea, and you receive back a reflection of somebody else's fear or limited thinking or their projection that you can't do it, there's actually a huge gift in it if it impacts you and has you think, oh, maybe they're right. Maybe I can't do it. It's actually bringing you the opportunity to face that fear, to not turn away from it, to not defend against it, actually. Because a lot of coaches out there will tell you, oh, don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to the haters. Don't listen to the people who are saying you can't do it. I actually say do. Do listen. They've got some incredibly valuable information for you, especially if it is pinging your own insecurity. And one of the worst things I think that we can do and are taught to do is to defend against it so that it doesn't get in. One of my longtime teachers taught me, you want to take in everything that is coming your way. Take it all in and feel what's true for you and then poop out the rest. That's how she would say it. Let it come in, take it in, feel what's true, and poop out the rest. So how do you know what's true? It's true if it pings you in any way. If you feel any charge when somebody says to you, oh, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or
Not
that
possible,
is,
or no one's going to come, or my mom would never do that.
Yeah, let's actually talk about it in very practical terms. What are some of the responses, if you have gotten any of that pushback response, what are some of those responses you've gotten?
One I heard is like, I just don't think this is my mom's work to do in this lifetime. Like, it's my work to do this healing work, but like, she's just almost like it's too far. She's too far. And I would say it didn't necessarily I didn't feel a trigger or a ping in my system as much as I felt like a awareness of, wow, every one of us gets to be really important about what we decide for someone else. Like, who are we to decide if our parents are too far gone? Who are we to decide if, is that story actually true? Is it actually true that her mom's not meant to heal, but that she is meant to heal in this lifetime? Maybe. But the only way to actually know is to create a space for influence and invitation.
Right. So this is a perfect example where you could do a couple things with her response. My mom isn't ready, or my mom wouldn't ever do this, or my mom doesn't need this. It's not hers to do. So you could say, okay, that's not my ideal client. That's not who I am here to serve, and just, block that response. Or you could take it in and say, oh, okay, this is an archetype that I will need to speak to, because maybe there's a lot of people out there that would feel that way. And if you don't take it in and hear it and actually let it impact you, not impact you to say, oh, I shouldn't do this, but impact you to say, okay, what is my response to that person? How do I help that person see how she could create an invitation for her mom in a safe way where her mom gives the yes or the no? And I think that, again, really taking it all in, taking in everything that life is bringing you. Life would not be bringing it to you if it was not for you to hear. Now, what you do with it is up to you. And that's part of the courage to act is, am I going to have the courage to act and face what's coming towards me? Or am I going to block it in some way? Am I going to defend against it? Am I going to pretend it's actually not for me to hear? Am I going to say, oh, that's your projection, or that's their projection, or they're just haters, or whatever would keep you from actually taking it fully all the way in, whatever you're hearing? And so my counter viewpoint to protecting yourself is actually to open yourself. When you think something is yours to do, actually open yourself to all of the feedback that life wants to give you as quickly as you can get your nervous system available to receive as much as you can so that you can work with what's coming your way, and work with it by, again, letting as much as you possibly can in, and then facing it. The faster you can do that, the faster you're going to be able to get into the courage to act and moving through these tests really rapidly. And this was definitely not an easy thing for me to do. The reality is that if I'm going to, for example, transform the financial services industry, if I'm going to come up with new models for how we allocate our resources, our time, energy, attention, and money, if I'm going to create a new model that is the antithesis of this pursuit of financial freedom, then I am going to need to face every single thing inside of me that is conditioned to be part of the old model. I'm going to have to face every bit of scarcity inside of me that is based in survival, that has been taught this scarcity model. I'm going to have to face every single naysayer who would say, maybe there's something wrong with me for example, using credit to build my businesses or going through bankruptcy, that I shouldn't be teaching on finances or resource management because I haven't done a good job. In fact, the reality is I have to do a bad job in order to transmute, to basically take in all of the medicine of all of those bad jobs, transmute it inside of me, alchemize it into something new, and create the next future possibility.
So one thing I heard you say in there that I think is an important point, and let me know if I'm getting this right, is for the listeners here, it's like, and something I've seen you do in being in close connection with you over and over and over again, is it is a level of infinite curiosity. Is that when life brings you anything, rather than putting up a block or saying this isn't for me, or I don't want to look at this, it's like, what is this trying to show me? What is this here to teach me? What is this experience? What is the gold? What is the lesson? What is the gift that I get to pull from this conversation, from this crazy interaction, from the New Year's Eve falling apart, all the things that could occur? It's like the curiosity is actually where the wisdom can be sourced from, versus putting up blocks of resistance due to insecurity, due to I don't want to look at it. So I'm curious what your relationship has been with curiosity in that process, because in your own process, because having the courage to act, receiving feedback from the outside world, starting to have people naysay, or someone attacks you. Who are you to teach this? Who are you to talk about this? It's like your curiosity and your consistent curiosity. Would you say that that's a piece of what has allowed you to come through those times like more resilient?
Yes, and the faster you can do that, the more rapid it will be. And we'll do a future episode on what happened over New Year's Eve as 2023 came in, that allowed me to see this so clearly, because a really bad thing in my own personal reality and yours happened. So we'll talk about that and how I think both of us were able to move through it incredibly rapidly so we didn't get stuck. Because, at least for me, and we'll talk about what it was for you, we were able to, at least again, for me, I'll put it for myself, I was able to see exactly what life needed me to see so fast that I didn't get stuck there. I was able to just move through it extremely quickly and transmute a core wound that in years past would have kept me stuck, maybe for months or maybe for years, hiding from feeling the depth of the pain that it brought me to. And so I think what we want you to take from this episode is that as you move into the courage to act, as you move into what you think is yours to do, life is going to show you everything that is in your own internal consciousness that does not believe that you can do it. It will show it to you in all these different ways. It will show it to you in the words of others. It will show it to you in things that come up that could be blockers. And how you handle these things determines how quickly you get to the other side. And so I think putting it in the context of this very new thing that you're doing, you've got a retreat that you're planning. And you're planning it pretty quickly. It's April now. You're going to be planning it for July. So May, June, July, 3 months. And my guess is that probably it's already started. People have been, number one, you said, in our last episode that already you're getting signs that you're on the right track. People you're talking to right away are saying, yes, I want to do that. So that's amazing. And also people you're talking to are giving you negative responses or no, that's not for me responses. Are there any other things that you're seeing that are coming up as you're moving closer to, you're going to lock in the date, you're going to lock in the retreat center, you're going to start making invitations, you're going to eventually write a sales page. What are the things that are coming up to say, how committed are you to this? How in alignment with this are you? And how are you moving through those?
Yeah, I would say more than anything, it's the pieces you've mentioned so far is what's been most alive. Is like, it's this mix between initial, oh my gosh, that sounds so amazing. And the other side of the spectrum, which is like either that sounds terrifying or I don't think that my mom would want to do that, or, and so it's more of, it's like this, the range of responses. And what I'm noticing and what I'm even noticing in your conversation, it's actually like how to stay neutral while also staying really grounded and rooted in the why. Like not allowing the naysayers or the negativity to pull me in that direction significantly, and not allowing a small win to take me to this other side of the spectrum. That's like noticing how easily, if we're allowing ourselves to ride the emotions of the positivity or the negativity, the up or the down, that has even more capacity to have an effect on the courage to keep going and on the courage to keep acting, even in the face of adversity or in the face of like wins, which sometimes can be like the either pull the foot off the gas pedal, or it could be just assume that it's going to continue to be that easy. So don't continue to put in the same level of effort. Like those are some things that I know can show up in the face of like when success is happening, that can be some of the downsides of easy early success, And so what I'm noticing, what I think is an important aspect for anyone who's listening is, can we stay in the neutrality of not allowing the highs, the emotional highs, the emotional lows to pull us off our center? Because it's actually in the centeredness, like this creation, let's call it, this retreat is not who I am. It's I'm clear enough now to realize, having put my identity in my businesses and in my work and in my body and in my, that like this entity gets to live separate from me, and it gets to have its own grounding cord connected to the earth, and it gets to be fully supported in its own thing. And I get to pour energy into it, but keeping myself individually as Amanda separate from it is something that I haven't always been the best at doing. And, knowing that, I get to like choose something differently this time and allow it as its own creation outside energetically of me to like be like, okay, this wants to be whatever it wants to blossom into. And I want it to have its own water and its own light. And I want it to blossom as it can, separate from me, and not allow the emotional high or low, response negative, yes, positive, to like take me off of my own sense.
Yeah, it's like unwinding the patterns of codependency that we can oftentimes have with our creations. Your creation is a living being separate from you. You are you. You have your own health, your own well-being, and then there's the thing that you're creating in the world, whether it's a business or a book or a podcast or a relationship. Those things are their own things. And you get to nourish and nurture those things, and you get to receive feedback around those things from life, and those things are not you. And so you maintaining your own wellness and your own well-being, regardless of what happens with the thing that you are creating outside of you, is going to give you the courage to continue to act, regardless of whether that thing has the results you thought it would have or that you wanted it to have. It's all grist for the mill. And that's really where what I think you're pointing to when you're pointing to my curiosity about life and what life is showing me, is that everything that occurs is grist for the mill. What is the mill? The mill is my own learning, my own knowledge, my own growth, my own evolution. And everything that life is attempting to show me is it's the nutrition, it's the feed. It's like the stuff that goes into the mill that I then get to determine what to do with that, how to interpret it, and how to learn, grow, and evolve through it, and use it to become more of what I want to see in the world. One of my favorite quotes, write this one down, because I want you to actually take it in and repeat it to yourself again and again and again and again. Every conflict and every challenge is a greater opportunity to be more of who I really am. And this one came to me when I was in my divorce back in 2005. And life, society, I won't call it life because, I think life is always operating for my benefit. I don't believe society is always operating for my benefit. And society, cultural conditioning, told me to fight with my husband, told me to shrink my business so that I would have to give him less, told me to try and keep as much as possible, told me to try and take as much custody of the kids as I could so I wouldn't have to pay him child support or alimony, told me to fight. And that was what the cultural conditioning said. And that was what society said. And fortunately, at that time, I had a very dear friend, my friend Joanne, who kept reminding me, no matter what he's doing, he's not doing it to you. And he was doing some pretty ugly things that if you looked on the surface of what he was doing, anybody would say, oh my God, you should totally take the kids, or you should totally not give him any resources. You should totally fight him. And she kept saying, he cannot take anything from you. He cannot take anything from you. He cannot hurt you. And that was a lot to try and wait, what? He's clearly hurting me. When he yells in my face, he's clearly hurting me. What I came to realize actually through that, though, is that when he yells in my face, I'm not putting up a boundary to keep him from yelling in my face. If he's yelling in my face, I'm allowing that. If he's quote unquote taking advantage of me, I'm allowing that. I'm not learning to put up the boundaries. And so through a lot of prayer during this time, what came through is this: every conflict is your greatest opportunity to be more of who you really am and who you really are. And in that, I got to ask myself, in the face of this, who am I? As he is doing this, who am I? Who do I want to be separate from what he is doing, or from what they are saying, or from what life is giving me? Who am I? Who do I want to be in this moment? And how do I continue to stand up? How do I continue to stand up and be the person and the being that, regardless of what's happening out there, I am going to be the most proud of? And thank you, life, if you are bringing me everything that I need to be brought to me to be able to see where I am not being who and how I want to be, where I'm not being who and how I want to be. And that came to me in a lot of ways throughout life, whether it was through Todd, my kid's dad, and all the things he was doing to me, which I could have taken as he's doing it to me. Therefore, I don't have to be in a way that I'm proud of, because I have total justification for being an absolute asshole
like
back.
Victim consciousness, victim state, like someone doing something to you.
I was completely conditioned into victim consciousness. And if there's anything that I got the opportunity to unwind more than anything throughout my life, it was victim consciousness. And my dad was the consummate victim. I can look at his consciousness, and we were best friends, and I love him so much. And I can just feel how painful it must have been for him to live in that victim consciousness, believing that his mom, the way that she raised him, caused him to be how he was. And he was at the effect of life, doing all these things to him. And therefore he couldn't be powerful. And therefore he had to take from others in order to provide for his family. And that I inherited that. I inherited that victim consciousness. And it was my opportunity, my karmic gift, and ultimately my karmic reward to be able to unwind that in my system and to transmute that in my system and alchemize it into the full empowerment of being able to see that everything was given to me as a gift to heal. And it's the exact same thing as you're stepping into your next courageous act, whatever that is, that life is going to give you the exact perfect tests that you need in order to see everything that is yours to transmute and to heal. And in fact, I would say that you're going to know that you're on the right path when those tests come. When the tests come, if you're not getting any tests from life, I think you're you're sheltering yourself way too much. You're keeping yourself way too protected, and you're probably not on path. You're probably not having the courage to act. You're keeping yourself safe and protected from seeing and feeling what needs to be seen and felt through you to do what's yours to do. And when you show up, and that's really what we get to look at now, is what does it really mean to show up and keep going through all of those tests? Life is going to test you. And I think actually, we'll go to the piece where I saw you post on your Instagram. This is the year of consistency. One of the things that you do regularly and that sometimes I do with you is get in the cold plunge.
Been one of my greatest teachers over the last 7 or 8 years.
And, a lot of people might look and say, why? Why would you do that? Why would you possibly get into ice cold water? And then, of course, the moment that you do it yourself for the first time and you get into ice cold water, your whole system is saying to you, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this? What? Get out of here. This is not good for you. This cannot possibly be good for you. It's the same, by the way, with medicine work, with ayahuasca. In the beginning years of my ayahuasca journeys, every journey at the very beginning, my whole being is saying, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I would get the message back that would say, you're a warrior. You are in training. You are being trained to expand your capacity. And that's, to me, what it means to show up. And I think it was probably Joe Rogan that I heard say this, like, you choose the struggle. You choose the challenge. And so the cold plunge, the ice bath, the medicine journey, the ayahuasca, which is not very often, sometimes it's really beautiful and incredibly gorgeous and easeful, but a lot of times it's hard, especially if you're working with, a lot that needs to be healed. It's the challenge that you choose. And so life is going to give you tests, and you're either going to go into those tests choosing, and you do it consciously and you do it intentionally, or life will give them to you. And either way, you have the choice as to whether or not you handle them with equanimity, which is that middle way that you were saying, like, don't get too high on the highs and don't get too low on the lows. Find support when you do, because you might go to the low of the low of the lows and the deepest despair. And you might spin out in the exuberance of over-optimism when things are going really well, and get support at either one of those so that you can come back to that middle place of equanimity, of remembering that life is always going to give you all of it. You're going to have the highest of the highs. You're going to have the lowest of the lows. You're going to get the biggest tests. You're going to choose as much as possible the tests you want. And then sometimes life is going to throw you a total curveball. And when you can approach it as much as possible from this place of curiosity and ultimately equanimity of, okay, this is what's here for me now. How am I going to be more of who I really am in the face of this? What does that even mean, to be more of who I really am? What are the values that I hold near and dear so that I can show up in the face of this challenge and not collapse into fawning or freeze or fight or flight? I didn't even know those words. 4 years ago, those are the trauma responses that we will have from our place of conditioning, from the trauma that kept us safe. But actually, who am I on the other side of that? Who am I if I'm not fawn? Oh, it's okay. Who am I if I'm not freeze? Who am I if I'm not running? Who am I if I'm not fighting? Who am I in the face of it?
It's a really powerful question. And I think it's one that each person who's listening, and continuously through each of our lives, we get the chance to ask and keep asking. Who am I and who am I becoming? Who am I and who am I becoming? Who am I? Who am I becoming? And the power of that knowing is what allows us to lean in times of adversity, in times of challenge, and to choose our own ways of creating, one of my ways of creating this like stress resilience is the cold plunge. Yes. So that I know that I am resilient. I have the identity of I am resilient. I've also been in a wheelchair and like completely taught myself to walk again. I know I am resilient. And having that as an identity is so powerful because, for one, it can't be taken away from me. It's not something that is dependent on whether or not the success happens or not. It's that no matter how many times I get knocked down, quote unquote, by life, by any experience that happens, I know and I believe in my capacity to get back up.
So I think where I want to leave this episode is for you to be in the curiosity and do some journaling and writing around who are you? Who are you? Not what are you doing, not what is your work in the world, but who are you? And this is one of the 4 parts of my marriage contract, my ketubah, and that I was taken through in my personal sovereignty, marry myself process. And if you go through the Marry Yourself course, that you'll be taken through as well. But even without that course, you can take yourself through it. It is making the list of the words that you will continue to return to in the times of challenge, in the times of conflict. Who are you? What are the words that remind you of who you are in the face of challenge and in the face of extreme success as well? Because if you don't have those words to return to, if you don't have those values to return to, wow, success and great success can just lead to kind of egoic inflation. Yeah. And egoic, like getting almost too big for your britches, I think is one of the words I've heard said before. And that happened to me. Like I forgot who I was in the face of my success because I didn't have these values. I didn't have these things these words written down that I could return to both in times of challenge and in times of great success. And so I encourage you to start to do that. Start to look around at the people around you that you really respect, the people around you that you really look up to, and what do they represent? Because if you're seeing them and you're watching them, I mean, you're listening to this podcast, which says that you probably respect the two of us. What are the qualities that we embody for you, that we're showing you that you want to embody more for yourselves? What are the qualities that are embodied by the people that you're tracking on social media, in the books that you read? I read a lot of dystopian kind of young adult novels. Those are my favorite. What are the qualities in those heroines? They almost always have female characters that are the heroines of the story. What are the qualities that those characters are embodying that I aspire to myself, such that if I was the heroine of this story of my own life, when I exhibit them, I would be so proud of this character that's me, this character that is you. And write down these words so you can begin to truly step into them in the moments of greatest challenge, so that when the tests come, as they will, if you're on the right path, you can face those tests with these qualities in your back pocket. Like, arrows in a quiver. These are your arrows that you can use to pierce through the tests and say to life, I see you, life. I see you, and I use my arrow to pierce you and to let you know that I'm here and I'm strong. That I'm here and I'm strong, and I'm going to keep going no matter what you throw my way. That's how life knows that you can handle more. Because life never gives you more than you can handle. And if it tests you and you can't handle it, okay, you just get less. No big deal. It's just giving you less so that you can build more capacity. It's just giving you less so that you can go back, maybe one more turn of the wheel, experience all the experiences again so that you can pass the test next time. There's always another chance, as long as you live. As long as you live, if there's one thing that the wisdom of age has given me, it is the knowing that it is never too late. You never run out of chances, ever. Until you die, until your body dies. And then, I don't know, my guess is that you still don't run out of chances, that your soul comes back in another form, giving you more chances. That's how I hold life. And it's just getting another chance again. Oh, I have another chance to do that differently next time. Oh, I have another chance to do that differently next time. And yeah, you might not get to do it with that same business, with those same clients, with those same friends, with that same boyfriend, with that same best friend, with that same relationship, with that same person. That's okay. Because you get to do it again with you. You get to do it again with you. You You are always here. You are the constant. And what a gift to be able to remember that, to be able to make it through the tests with that knowledge in your back pocket. I hope that gives you the courage to act and keep going.
Just keep swimming.
That's right.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode and for just taking in the wisdom, the lessons, the gifts that are both have happened in your life and are happening in your life and will continue to happen in your life. And I will continue to do the same. So thanks, Allie, for some of the wisdom nuggets from your own journey that you've shared today, both so that I can take that into this current stage of acting. And for those who are listening, they can also take that into the stage of taking courageous action and moving forward at the face of adversity and moving forward at the face of challenge and noticing that as life brings things to us to test our resolve, to test our resilience, to test our grit, to test our keep goingness through how important whatever it is that we need to keep going through is, that it's available should we choose it.
And it gets so much easier. I promise. It really, really, really gets so much easier. And one day you will look and you will say to yourself, oh my God, I did it. I made a right turn somewhere. And here I am on this path of ease and grace and upward spiral. And I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. And I know that that is available for you wherever you are right now. So
please continue to be a part of our community, the guided community, where those who are seeking continued growth and expansion in their life come to hear some of the stories of both ourselves and the guests that we're bringing on this show, and the wisdom and the gifts that have been learned along the path.
If you enjoy the Guided Podcast, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, and be sure to come back next week. Until then, this is Allie Katz and
Amanda Goolsby.
And remember, life knows.